let me tell you something, okay? I'd always been what I call religious and ratchet, okay? I was religious and ratchet for a long time. I would go to church and leave the same. I would go every Sunday and Wednesday. But I found myself in this corporate with my dream job, in this corporate space, dream job, drive my little Lexus, dream car, bought my little house, dream house, still felt empty, still had no voice. And I remember one day I said, you know what? I think I just need to build a better relationship with God. Well, I couldn't have said relationship because I didn't know that was a thing yet. But I said, I think I just need to get closer to God. And I started coming home every day and praying, right? That started to build my relationship. Every single day I came home, I prayed at 5:30. I did this for about 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, I feel like the presence of God all over me. I'm like, what is this feeling? It feels
what did it feel? What did that feel like?
And it literally felt like someone was standing over me.
Hello, and welcome back to the Minor Detail Podcast. It's your host, Khaila Ariel. And listen, I am so grateful that you are tuning in today. Today's conversation is just going to be amazing. I know I say that all the time, but truthfully, today's conversation will be, it'll be an anointing one. I can already feel it, okay? Before y'all got here, we've already been talking. We've already been getting to know one another. And I'm just so excited to introduce you to Dr. LaTanya Moore. She is here with us. Hailing from North Carolina. You've been in Dallas for about a year now, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I'm excited. Number one, that you're in Dallas because I feel like the timing is just so perfect. I thought you were just from here when I reached out and you're like, no, I've been here for a year. So I'm really excited and just grateful that you're joining us.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. And it makes me feel so connected because remember I told you God sent me to Dallas on assignment, right? So you're a part of the assignment.
Ooh.
All right. Right. To get here and be here for a year and to get invites, right, to platforms and to podcasts and things of that nature. It's like, okay, God, you sent me for a reason. So let me walk in that reason.
I love it. Well, for those of y'all who do not know, Dr. Moore is a licensed therapist, but also you have your PhD in organizational therapy.
Organizational leadership.
Yep. Okay. So organizational leadership, which I thought was so interesting because I was like, is that like corporate? Like, what does that mean? What does that entail? But you're also a coach of visionaries, CEOs, leaders who are just wanting a little bit more clarity around their strategy and how they want to grow their business and just taking it to new heights in general. So I love your background, your expertise, your level of experience, because I feel like you can speak to so many different phases in life.
I can. And it's scary a little bit.
Yeah. But I'm excited for listeners to listen in, to watch, to view, because I really think that there is so much to learn from this conversation, to learn from you at all levels. And that's just so beautiful to me.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Well, let's dive in. Let's dive in. So before we really get to the nitty gritty, I do want to set the scene just a little bit. Talk to us about, your background, kind of how you got your start in therapy, truthfully, and just how you got to where you are today.
Ooh. So personally, I am from a small town called Rocky Mount, North Carolina. That is the place where you got to get an education in order to get out. Okay. It's the place where I call it half country and half hood. I was somewhere in the middle. Okay. I have all sides. And so I grew up in a single parent household, a father who was on drugs, who was in jail. I have a great relationship with now. He is off the streets. But grew up in a household where I knew that I had to make it out and education was going to get me there. And so that is hence PhD, right? Like just keep going. Professionally, you touched on all those things, right? Therapist, organizational leadership, and really moving into the space now where I knew that I could be the person who handles the corporate and the kingdom, right? And that just kind of leads to spiritually. I am a daughter of a king, okay, of the king. And so I really consider myself the person who God has chosen, the one who he has called, the masterpiece, to really build blueprints for people and really help creators and creatives, to really help visionaries, leaders, CEOs, kingdom builders to really step into that next level that he's called them to. So that's who I am.
I love it. In so many words.
I try to cover all of them: personal, professional, spiritual. Yeah.
For sure. So I know we were talking a little bit before this, but I thought it was interesting sort of what motivated you to go from practicing therapy to then getting your PhD to then moving kind of like into the corporate space. Can you talk to us a little bit about, what that journey was like and what even inspired you to want to like make those shifts in the first place?
Absolutely. So it's interesting because I wanted to become a therapist in 8th grade. Okay. Like what 8th grade? I wrote down, I want to be a therapist on my little sheet, and they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, a therapist. I remember them asking me like, how do you even know what that is?
No, I was just about to say like,
how do you even
we
know?
weren't thinking about therapy that young. And honestly, therapy wasn't cool back then either. So where did that come from?
My great grandmother used to call it a shrink. And I'm like, what is a shrink? And so I realized later in life, I mean, just a few years ago, how I came up with this. My brother has sickle cell anemia. He was in and out of the hospitals all of his life. And there was a lady, Miss Deborah Figgins is her name. Okay. She would come to our house. She would meet with him. She would like make sure he was on the right track. Well, really, she was a social worker. Right. And I thought, well, if she can help my brother, like she's a therapist and I want to be like her, And so that's where the term came from. So I went to school. I was not confused at all. I felt so bad because most of my friends were confused when we graduated. Like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. We're just going to take some general classes. And so I'm like, nope, I'm taking therapy class. I'm going to psychology. So I got my degree in psychology. But I started working in community mental health and I grew very quickly there. Okay. I was like the 17, 18-year-old person in school. And then when I graduated, being in my early 20s, I was the person who was like, taking on 40, 50-year-old positions. Okay. I became a whole community director. I was the clinical director of a community health organization. And I started to realize I was seeing clients every single day. And I'm like, clients aren't changing because the systems aren't changing. Like I can talk to them every day. I can help, but the system is really keeping them here. And here I am thinking and feeling like I am the solution to this problem. Okay. Me, myself, and I go get a whole PhD because I figure, I can change this. Don't worry about it. I got it, So I go get a PhD and I decide that I'm going to start working at the corporate level so that I can help change the systems and the rules that will then impact and affect the people that I used to talk to day to day.
Wow. That there's so much there. From 8th grade to being like, and now I want a PhD.
Now I want a PhD.
Like that's a journey for sure.
Yeah. And a transition too, because I'm sitting here thinking back then I always thought that I am the solution to the problem. Right. And so as I've matured, God shows me, yes, you are a solution to a problem, but you also create solutions to problems. You don't have to be the one to live out that solution, right? You can pass it to someone else to do. And so, that took a lot off my shoulders, a little burnout.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So what were you seeing systemically where you were like, this is a problem? Like what was happening in the systems where you felt like that was the real barrier to seeing progress in your clients?
There were so many things, but one I would say in leadership, right? So in leadership, decisions are made about client care when leaders have not met with clients.
Yeah.
I'm like, how? Sway? Like how are you all making decisions about what clients are going through and what they need when you haven't spoken to a client, The same thing with insurance companies. I'm like, how are you all making decisions that this client only gets this amount of sessions as if you were in their home every day experiencing the trauma with them?
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, I need to do something. So those are two of the things for sure. I'm like, this isn't right.
That's so real. And you like, when you are the client, like you never think of it that way. It's just almost like, okay, I'm trying to, because that's a big one. Trying to go through insurance for therapy is a hassle. And a lot of times people end up paying out of pocket.
Yep.
Or now therapists really don't want to take insurance. I'm sure there's something on the back end there that is difficult for you as a service provider.
Absolutely.
So I can definitely see those are obviously large red flags.
Yes.
And see those being things that you want to help solve for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, huge ones. And then too, I wasn't necessarily in my place where relationship with God was like really a part of my story yet. However, I was also at the place where I'm like, you know what? Some of these people just need deliverance. Like they need Christian counseling. They need, and so there are so many limitations, that you see too in therapy. So I kind of stepped outside of the therapy room a little bit just because I want to do more coaching. Coaching space allows you to do a little bit more, right? You aren't so restricted. So it allowed me to do a little bit more.
Yeah, it gives you that flexibility.
Yeah,
that's so real though. You said so many people need deliverance.
Oh yeah, so many people need deliverance. I'm like, I really want to lay hands.
Yeah.
But I would get sued if I was doing this under my license. And so
that's funny.
Yeah.
There's a show on is it Apple TV called The Shrink or something like that.
Really?
I don't know the name of it for sure. It's so funny though, because he's a therapist and he ends up doing very illegal things with his clients because he wants to help heal them.
Yeah.
And he's like, this like room to person to person thing is not working. So like he takes them out of the office and his team is like, what are you doing? But I think it's the funniest thing because like, and it's not, you know, specific to being like Christian focused or anything like that. But it just shows you how like sometimes humans need more interaction or they need a different approach.
Yes.
And you're so right. When you have people making those decisions who aren't even in the room, like that's wild.
Yes, because it's book knowledge.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Times have changed. Those books do not apply. They do not apply. It's nice to read. But baby, these things have changed.
Yeah.
Okay, people have changed. And especially after a whole pandemic that absolutely no one was prepared for. Yeah, times have changed.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real. So you go to get your PhD and then you move into more of like the corporate space, helping the leaders in that environment.
Yes.
What was that experience like? Because I heard that you mentioned you hadn't had a like strong relationship with God, or it was kind of like the beginning. What was that experience like for you kind of moving into that corporate space?
Yeah. So corporate was very interesting for me because I thought, you know, here I am. I got my superhero cape on, baby. I done tied it to the back. Okay. I've gotten this PhD. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to change the world. Right. And so I go into these corporate spaces and I find myself as the only Black woman there. Okay. The only Black woman there. And I'm sitting around in boardrooms where most of them are white men. Right. And so they have the same PhD that I have, but I lose my voice. Okay. I was in a place where everyone had an opinion. Everyone had something to say. And I had things to say as well, but it was not valued on the same level. Right. And so I found myself like shrinking back and feeling like, okay, how am I going to navigate this? I cried almost every day. I feel the emotion of that thing right now. I cry almost every day when I first stepped into like what I call big boy corporate. You know what I mean? I remember having conversations with people like, how am I going to get through this? And so I started to shrink back, and I just found myself in a place where I would show up to the meetings. I would take the notes. I would, you know, when I say take notes, like I had the same degree, but I found myself in a position where I could not speak, you know, and I wasn't valued. And so something began to shift for me, because I started to come into a relationship with God. Let me tell you something, okay? I'd always been what I call religious and ratchet, okay? I was religious and ratchet for a long time. I would go to church and leave the same. I would go every Sunday and Wednesday. But I found myself in this corporate with my dream job, in this corporate space, dream job, drive my little Lexus, dream car, bought my little house, dream house, still felt empty, still had no voice. And I remember one day I said, you know what? I think I just need to build a better relationship with God. Well, I couldn't have said relationship because I didn't know that was a thing yet. But I said, I think I just need to get closer to God. And I started coming home every day and praying, right? That started to build my relationship. Every single day I came home, I prayed at 5:30. I did this for about 2 weeks. And I get to this place, I'm like, okay, I'm walking around my kitchen, and all of a sudden I feel like the presence of God all over me. I'm like, what is this feeling? It feels
what did it feel? What did that feel like?
It's like jittery. Like, what's going on? And it literally felt like someone was standing over me. And so I look at the clock, I look at the microwave, and it's 5:30. And I'm like, man, I've been praying with God 5:30 every single day. And it's like, God was like, what are you doing? Hello? It's our time together, you know?
Yeah.
And so during this time, I'm in this corporate space, but I'm building this relationship with God. And oh my God, I started to find myself in him. I started to find my identity in him. And I started to get my voice back. Baby, I went right back to that same boardroom. Okay. And they would be passing, you know, things around and talking. And all of a sudden, I like to add on to that. I like to add this point. They saw a whole 180 and they're looking at me like, what in the world did she? Yeah, I've always been this way. You silenced me for a little while, but you ain't got me for much longer. So that relationship really transformed things in corporate for me.
I love that story so much. It just makes me so happy inside, because I'm like, corporate will do it to you for so many reasons. I mean, for like, even beyond, you know, being a woman, being a woman of color, you know, not being seen as valued or as valuable than the next person, just because for some reason there's this level of entitlement that says I am better than you. You know what I mean? Like, or you are inferior. And I think that it's so beautiful to just hear that you have had that experience, because so many people go through it.
Yeah.
So many people lose themselves, or they go, they come to this space with this spark, and they have this excitement, like you said, around being the solution, around solving the problem. And then you get in this space and you're like, now, wait a minute.
I don't have, You're like, I don't have any solutions at all. I did not feel valuable at all.
Yeah. And you're second guessing yourself and like, speaking up, like you said, in those conversations. And then it's like, all of a sudden, just kidding, because I learned who I am.
Okay. That part. Let me tell you something, how everything will shift when you learn who you are. Everything, every aspect of your life will shift when you learn who you are. When you learn your identity in Christ, you will show up as such. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So when you entered corporate, that was like around what years?
That was
or year?
2016, 2017.
Okay. So you're like kind of working towards a relationship with God at this point. You're obviously working your way into corporate, getting more comfortable.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Oh my gosh. I'm continuing this conversation with God. And I'm like, God, I really want to move into a relationship with you, right? So I started bringing people together who also wanted to bring, this relationship to fruition, right? And so I started meeting with people. Oh, at this point, I am building a whole community. Had no idea. Was building a whole personal brand. No idea, And so I started doing these things. But then God also began to speak to me about corporate and kingdom. Ooh. He started to show me how he was going to move me out of corporate and into kingdom. And so he was building my skill set in corporate so that I can use those skills in kingdom or in the kingdom, because the kingdom need blueprints, structures, strategy, and all those things, right? A lot of people think that, we go to church and we go home and, nothing happens in between. You pay your tithes, you worship. Baby, it's a whole system at play. Okay. And so he began to build my skills in corporate so that I can move into kingdom. And so, and do so in a way where I'm free. Oof, I feel free right now.
Yeah.
I feel so free. Like when he began to move me out of corporate into, the kingdom space, I'm like, ooh, I like this feeling. Like I'm free in my worship. I'm free in who I am. I can show up the way that God has called me to. I can prophetically, move into the spaces that he's called me to, say whatever it is he's saying. Yeah. And be free in that,
That's so good, because I feel like a lot of people are looking for that feeling. They're looking for that experience. They're looking for that permission to step into that level of boldness. I know at one point I was thinking about like, what do I want? Like, what am I doing all of this for? What does fulfillment look like for me? Right. You talked about not feeling fulfilled. And one day it hit me. I'm like, freedom. Like, where did that come from? I didn't make that up. You know what I mean? When you think about being financially free, when you think about, wanting to pay your debts or wanting to even like one of the common examples I use is wanting to make more money. Because I think for me, that was when I really learned, or really more so, God really had to restructure my heart and like ambition and what all of that was rooted in, because I wanted my first 6-figure job and I so badly wanted to make more money so that I could show myself that I was self-sustainable and I could do all these things. And God was like, that's fine, but we got some work to do. Yeah. And I feel like all of 2023 specifically, because hello, it's 2024. When we're recording this, I was really learning to surrender. Yes. And to lose self-ambition, like completely break up with it. And it's really taken a toll, and it was a real journey. And sometimes it hurt and it wasn't sexy. But I think a lot of times we equate a lot of those things. We equate money with the things that we want materialistically. We equate, success with more access, with being able to do more with our time. And I think that it's just so beautiful to get to that point. Yes.
I love that you went through that process. I always say that my first wealth is freedom.
Yeah, for sure.
I am wealthy. My freedom makes me wealthy. So there are so many areas, and I agree that it takes a lot of surrender. Maybe you got to surrender every day.
I know.
Every single day I surrender. I'm like, Lord, I throw my hands up. I give you permission to search. I give you permission to guide. Like I surrender it all. Yeah. I surrendered this morning because, you just never know.
I'm not in control.
I'm not.
That's what you're doing. You're reminding yourself that I am not in control with I'm not in control of any of this. With where the day goes, with, the only things I am in control of are the things that I can't control. Yes. I can control my perspective. I can control how I respond to the person who is driving too slow in front of me or who cuts me off. You know what I mean? Like, but at the end of the day, you don't control other people and how other things operate. Yes. And that surrender is just reminding yourself that, okay, God, you got this. Yeah. I'm here. I'm listening.
Yeah. That's a message for somebody right now who's listening.
Yeah.
Let go.
Yeah.
Surrender.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So to bring it back.
Okay.
To bring it back, one of the things I think that has stuck out so much from just like you talking, your story, me following you on social is just accessing faith and understanding the value that you bring. Because I know to be able, because I don't know that we've actually specifically talked about it, but to be able to leave the corporate space and move in that boldness, like what drove you to make that decision? Because I don't even want to be like, how did you get there? Like, no, listen, specifically, you had to make a choice.
Listen,
right?
When I tell you it was a whole story, even though God had been talking to me about it, you would have thought, I would be prepared. It was a Monday at noon when the Lord told me to resign that day.
Like, was it in your mind?
It was everywhere. Okay. When I tell you it was a Monday at noon, it was in my spirit. I knew I was not supposed to be there. I knew my time had come to an end.
I love that.
And it was abrupt, And I thought, oh, I'm tripping. Like, I know I hear God, and I know I hear God very well, but I was tripping that day. And so I'm like, let me just go to Dunkin' right quick. Let me just get in my car, drive, get a little air, go to Dunkin'. On my way to Dunkin', my mentor sends me a message and she says, LaTanya, I think, what is the Lord saying about your job? And I was like, what is she talking about?
That I have one?
Yeah. And then I kid you not, I get a message from a friend of mine. He's prophetic as well. And he says, the Lord told me to tell you that your position is coming to an end. This is two like confirmations. I'm not even a confirmation person. When I hear God, I'm like, okay, let's go. But that right there, I'm like, okay. I drive to Dunkin', I come back, I get on my computer. Okay. The interesting part is I make faith moves all the time. So in faith, I had already typed up a resignation letter, okay? And it had been a while. And I dated this resignation letter. Well, I get back home and that resignation letter was like exactly 2 weeks away from the date. Like I'm talking about it lined up perfectly.
So you had written it already?
I had written it already.
Okay, so the feelings of like moving were there. Moving on were there. Okay.
Well, that's because God told me he was going to move me. Oh. Right? So I thought I needed more prep, more time to learn these skills and everything. And he's like, nope, here it is today.
Wow.
Now, here's the interesting part. The Lord tells me to quit on Monday at noon. On Thursday, so I cried Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday comes and I'm crying because I'm like, how long my savings gonna last? Like, I got to do something, you know what I mean? And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking like, what am I going to do? I know I have skills. I knew I could come up with some things, but I'm like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And on that Thursday, the Lord tells me, I want you to go on tour for ministry. Yeah. I want you to pray. I want you to preach. I want you to prophesy. I want you to lay hands. I want you to, and I planned a tour in 30 days.
Wow.
And I went to 4 different cities and did exactly what he told me to do.
Goodness.
I know.
I told you this earlier, but you have lived some lives.
Paid in full tour. Like people donated, people sold, when I tell you it was amazing. I have so many testimonials and I just moved the way that God began to show me the principalities that are at work, like over some of the places that I went. And when I tell you I was in warfare for quite some time, however, every time I showed up to one of those places, people were freed, delivered, set free. I was moving in the power that I didn't even know I had.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't even know I had this power. And so I went and I did what he told me to do. After that, so at this point, I'm still technically not, I'm unhomed, unworked, you know what I mean? Not really unhomed, but I you know what I mean? I don't have a job.
Unemployed, as they say.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I do this tour and then the Lord sends me to Jerusalem.
What?
Yeah.
I'm learning new information with y'all.
I know. The Lord sends me to Jerusalem. I go to Jerusalem, okay? Israel, like before, there's a lot of stuff going on over there right now. Okay. Yeah. Praise God, I made it out. Listen, I go over there for 2 weeks and I have miracles happen to me. I had a lump in my breast when I went over there. I was delivered, like lump gone, disappeared. I had encounters with God over there that are like just unexplainable. I had some that are explainable. Denounce letters, like all types of things happen.
Pause.
Oh yeah.
Like in PhD? Am I saying that right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a Delta.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got some connections in the room, is what I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm like trying to keep it here. Okay. Trying to keep it on set.
Gotcha.
But this is a very interesting topic right now.
Yeah. But it's not about denouncing.
No, for sure.
It's about deliverance.
Yeah, for sure.
Because what the Lord showed me is he showed me 3 generations of open doors while I was there. 3 generations of open doors. That first open door was for my grandfather. The second open door was for my mother. And the third open door was me. Not only did he show me the open door and what entered, right? Negative spirits. He also showed me the potential of what my grandfather could have lived up to, what my mom could have or should be living up to, because she's still alive. My grandmother passed. My grandfather passed when I was young. But when he did that, he showed me the level of generational blessings in my family. And the moment that I closed that door and I was delivered, I pulled down a blessing. I tapped into something completely different that I had no idea I had again, right? And so he showed me what was on my grandfather, and I literally had access to it.
And this all happened while you were in Jerusalem?
In Jerusalem.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I come back and I'm like, Lord, what you want me to do now? And the Lord's like, okay, you can start working again. But working for yourself, working like you are employed full time by me.
That is just like such an extreme level of trust.
Oof.
You know, like it's tough. There are a lot of tough decisions being made. I can imagine though, like when miracles happen, you have no choice but to listen and follow, right? Because now I'm showing you who I am.
Okay.
Like, this is not somebody preaching a sermon. This is not somebody who, you know, maybe is in your family that you feel really close to. This is not a mentor talking about God. I am showing you who I am. So I imagine that like we're building trust, right? And credibility. Yeah. Not that God is not credible, but we have to have that experience for ourselves. It's so important.
That's why relationship is important. I used to always say when I was in that phase before relationship, I'm like, I'm hanging on to another man's faith. And I'm like, I don't know him for myself. So I'm hanging on to this person's word and that preacher's word and, you know, what my grandma said. And I thought to myself, I really have to, you know, get to a place. And that's why I encourage people now, when you go, okay, you listen to the sermon, come back home and read that for yourself. Come back home and ask God for the revelation for yourself. You know, ask him to show you what this means in practical application for yourself. And so, yeah, that's so important.
I'm still stuck on Jerusalem.
Jerusalem was a whole, listen, my pastor told me a couple weeks ago, she's like, it's like you got a mantle dropped on you. I said, I think so. And I think it happened when I was in Jerusalem. Man. Something happened over there. Yeah, there are so many experiences that I had over there. I got baptized in the Jordan when I was there.
Yeah, I'm like, give us one more. Give us like one more groundbreaking TMD exclusive.
From there, I got baptized in the Jordan. And it was so interesting. I've been baptized before, but I go into this water, right? And we know it's a river, baby, it's fish. They all over your feet and everything. It ain't nothing pretty, okay? They all over the place. And so you're like, I'm stepping into this water and I know like, you know, this is so significant. So I'm like taking on everything that I know that the Bible describes as it relates to the Jordan River, right? There's healing power here. There's miracles, you know, here. And so I'm stepping in the water and I simply hear God say, you're leaving mediocre in the water. And I was like, am I mediocre? Like, no, oh my God. You know, I'm like, I thought I was good. Like I thought I was. And the Lord says, you're leaving mediocre in the water. And when I came up, I was so emotional because I thought to myself, mediocre to me in that moment meant all the promises that I wasn't living in yet.
Yeah.
And even as I walked through the promised land, I realized the number of promises that we were not living in. I walked on streets that were like marble streets and people walked on streets. And I said, this is the same marble that we pay thousands of dollars for in America to have in our kitchens. And here it's a casual thing. People are walking on it. Okay. Whole perspective shift. The things that I used to desire for are now under my feet. Oof.
Come on.
It was.
I mean, that's.
It was monumental. Yeah.
The things that I used to desire are now under my feet.
Like there is no glass ceiling. When you start to realize, like, okay, the things that we desire here in this worldly life are so small. So small. I'm like, and the power in our tongues can bring those things forth, right? Yeah. You know, if they're in the will of God. But it's like we got to start desiring the promises to really be fulfilled in our lives, so much so that we see what God said. I'm a seer. I want to see what God said.
I love that. I've been telling myself often since the start of this year that I'm a visual person. I know that about myself. So I need to see. When I do things, I need to set it up for myself in a way that I can see it and visualize it. And I don't mean like a vision board, which is nothing wrong with a vision board. Yeah. But like, if there's something that I want to bring to life that I know that God has put on my heart, I need to see it every day. Yes. And like really walk that thing out.
Because when you see it, you'll see it.
Yeah. Man. Okay.
Yeah.
Where do we go? Help me out, y'all. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so I want for a moment, I do want to talk about stuckness, because I think that, man, like many people who have come to you, whatever stage in life they are in, like I imagine that there is a level of fear and doubt that they are experiencing. Can you speak to the correlation between stuckness, fear, and how faith and understanding your true value come into play? Because I think, I mean, it sounds like you've had this whole experience.
Oh, absolutely. So let me just start by saying fear and doubt used to grip me. Okay. Fear had me in a chokehold for a really, really long time. And I had to start making faith moves as a result of the fear that I was experiencing.
Yes.
And one of those experiences actually happened when I was in corporate. I was sitting there. The Lord started to speak to me. I'm building this relationship, right? The Lord starts to speak to me. I'm writing on the back of an agenda. I know they probably thought I was taking some notes. Baby, no, I was listening to God. You know, I was like writing out this whole idea he had given me. And before, I would have allowed those notes to stay right there. I would have allowed those notes to stay in a journal. I would have allowed those notes to stay in my heart. I would have allowed those notes to stay in my mind. But this time I said, no, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to move in faith. And I took all of that and I actually sent an email. I was actually telling just a couple people, I'm like, I'm going to do this course, right? And so this is back then. I'm like, I'm going to do this course and I'm going to teach people to do these things. Well, God showed me the whole vision. It was called Driving My Dreams. It was so cool. I had an analogy for everything, rearview mirror, side mirrors, everything. And when I tell you, I went home and I sent an email. So I moved in faith. When I moved in faith, I activated something. And now when I feel fear, I move in faith. Okay. So that's one experience. The same thing happened with doubt. I began to have these doubt cycles, right? And here's the way that this all relates to faith and it relates to really understanding your value. A lot of people see doubt as a distraction, right? Doubt distracts you. Doubt keeps you, away from the things that God really wants you to do. It tells you, negative things about yourself. But when you see doubt as a disruption, it becomes an opportunity, right? Disruption is really divine. Disruption, I looked at a definition because I said, let me just look it up. The Lord reminded me of this morning. Disruption traditionally is actually defined as a business term. When new customers come into a market that might overflow or overload something, when new products come onto the market that disrupt, right? But what happens is you see it as an opportunity. When companies see it as an opportunity, they're able to then fill gaps for their customers. What if we thought about doubt the same way? Doubt, I'm feeling you and you're a disruption. So now because I feel you in this area, I'm going to go to that area. The very disruption that you're trying to cause, I'm going to create an opportunity there. Oof. You be like, doubt, let me stumble your head right quick. Okay. Right. Let me just handle this. And that's where, faith and value comes in because again, and it relates back to identity. When you feel fear, when you feel doubt, there are practical tools and things that you can use, right? But when you feel those things, knowing and understanding that one, you got to move in faith. Two, you got to lean into the disruption and the opportunity. And you got to really learn how to step into that thing by trusting God in the process. Yeah. And trusting him in the process looks like doing something crazy.
Every time.
It's not supposed to make sense.
Yeah.
You take one step and it's like, this sounds crazy, but I'm going to go here. And so leaning in means standing on your faith because faith is actually action. Yeah. Faith requires application. I always tell people you can believe all day. You can believe bigger, but belief, that's not going to get you to the place of action. That's not going to get you to the place of application, right? Faith means that you actually do something. Belief is knowing that it's possible, knowing that it can happen. Faith is actually stepping into it and doing something about it because you know it's possible.
I love that.
It's twofold.
I love that. And I feel like I've never really heard faith broken down like that. We always hear like faith without works is dead and, blah, blah, blah. But I think what is so interesting about what you just said is that doubt is an opportunity. And I think that in my own personal life, I'm starting to see that and like I'm starting to allow that to like trigger me to pay attention to it, right? Because we might doubt something or fear something and we look away or we procrastinate from it or we avoid it. That's the word. Yeah. There's a lot of avoidance there. Yeah. But now I'm learning to tell myself like, no, if you feel fear, give it attention and figure out why is this triggering me? Absolutely. What is it? Because it's not necessarily to say that it is a bad or a good thing. It's just like, no, that's like I take it as like a siren. Like something is going off within me to make me want to step away, to distract myself, to forget about it, but it's always going to be there.
Absolutely.
And I think too, the second thing that you said that is just like so major, is that we have to trust God.
Yeah.
And when we do not, there is a level of self-dependency that comes in, and it's going to come in every single time until we are willing to surrender it to a certain extent or just believe that it's bigger than us.
Yeah.
And that's why I really do want relationship with God for everyone.
Yes.
Like, because I have literally been able to see how much it has transformed my own life. And I literally want that experience for everyone else around me, everyone I love, people I know, I don't know, because I'm like, it is so freeing. We talked earlier about how the smallest of things that we see as, see as things that we don't want to give up because they're things that we enjoy in the world or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I like to keep this topic as like high level as I can because people hear it, they feel like it's churchy, it's woo woo, and they want to run away from it. But we see things that we don't want to give up as things that we enjoy. And that's why we don't want to step into the fullness of God because we feel like we have to lose something in order to like become something different, I guess. But I'm like, no, you're losing something to gain everything.
To gain everything. Yes.
To gain everything.
That's what happens. A lot of people focus on what they're going to lose, what you have to give up, instead of focusing on what you're going to gain. I'm so glad you said that. It is a stripping away of the layers and the stuff that you took on that you were never supposed to take on in the first place. Having that stress that you experiencing is because of something or someone that you took on that never, you were never supposed to be connected with, things that never belonged to you. And so when you start the stripping away of those habits and those things, you start to gain the peace that you really desire, the freedom that you really desire, the relationship connection that you really desire. So yeah, let some stuff go.
Our brains are so strong too. I mean, you having a PhD in psychology, I'm just like, what? They're just it's so powerful.
Yeah.
It's so powerful that it can change our perspectives into thinking one thing over another.
Yep.
And it's interesting because I'm like, what are the connections between God and psychology, God and the brain? Like, is that something that you've ever thought about or kind of dove into? That just randomly came across my mind.
It's interesting because Anita Phillips did a really, really good
illustration.
Illustration on this. Yeah. And so I love that too. And one of the things that God helped me understand is that because it is a mountain for me, like it is an area of influence, right? So whatever your mountain is, if you're a mountain, you're supposed to influence creators, then you have the language there. Yeah. Okay. And so really we have authority there as well. So there is so many correlations between, the brain, how the body works. Like we were made in his image, right? We were made in his image. And because of that, then he is the one who can help us understand the intricacies of every part of us, right? That's why when we buy a new, something we need to put together, we go to the instructions. The reason why we need to go back to the instructor, we need to go back to the creator, the one who created us, to really get the instructions of how these things work and how we are supposed to operate and work. So I've learned that I've learned a lot of language around mental health that then helps me understand how God really desires to flow in and throughout mental health. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. Because Anita Phillips, she talks about the garden within, right?
Yeah. And I love that because one of the things that God began to show me is like how everything is connected, right? We know that everything is connected. And for a long time, everybody tried to separate mental health and physical health. But then you see people getting, diseases because of stress. Right? Everything is connected. And so when we begin to learn through relationship with him, God will show you, this is how important relationship is. God will show you what's happening in your body.
Oh, for sure.
He will show you what is, shifting, changing, all those things. And so you got to be in tune with what he's doing with you.
I love it. I love it. Let's talk about purpose because I think that when we were talking about value, understanding your value and faith and what that looks like in your life. For me, it ties or deeply is connected and rooted into purpose. And I remember coming into early adulthood and feeling like there were a lot of people around me that would say things like, I don't know where to get started. I don't know what move to make next because I don't necessarily know my purpose. And I think that's kind of like the beginning stages of learning to trust God or learning to, or even being open to learn what your purpose is. What, or I guess more specifically speaking, how can those listening in learn to view themselves and their work as meaningful and purposeful? And I asked that specific question because I think oftentimes we question ourselves and we question the things that have literally been placed within us because we feel as though it should look different, it should appear to be different, or we're looking at the next person's purpose and we're like, well, if that's their purpose, then mine should be like this. Like for those that are listening, how can we begin to recognize those things within ourselves and understand that they are meaningful? They're there for a reason, and that is in fact what we are purposed to be doing.
So my first thought or kind of question would be, if God gave you the cure to cancer today, what would you do? I love asking people this question. Most of the time they'll say, oh, I'll go tell everybody. I'll get on the news station. I'll be, running through the stadium. I'll be, I'll show up everywhere. I'll tell everybody. I'll go, to the hospitals, all those things. And I'm like, okay, I love that. Right? Because you have a cure. The God just gave you a cure to cancer. What if I told you that he's giving you a cure and that every one of us is a cure, right? Before we were formed in our mother's womb, he knew us, he set us apart. Like he helped. That scripture, first of all, lets us know in Jeremiah 1:5, it lets us know that he already knew us, he set us apart, and that he set us on a mission, a purpose, for a reason. So that means that he has specifically placed something in us that is a cure to someone else. Okay. So the first thing I would say is it requires that you start to look within. Oftentimes we try to find our purpose. Well, one, it ain't lost. It ain't lost at all. We try to find our purpose and look for and all those things. No, it's discovered in you and even deeper in relationship with him. Okay. The other thing I would say is it has absolutely nothing to do with a title. Some people think that their purpose is some fancy title. I'd be like, baby, that's a cute title. But baby, my purpose is to motivate and inspire, right? It is nothing cute about that. Like it's to motivate and inspire. And the Lord began to show me 3 different ways that I can do so over time, though. He showed me that I do so. I motivate and inspire through healing, right? That's where my whole mental health background comes from. And that was already in me before I was born in my mother's womb, right? That was in me. And then he showed me through freedom. I don't like to see people bound. I don't like to see people, and I don't mean just deliverance, right? I don't like to see people stuck. I don't like to see people who aren't progressing, right? And so I began to realize like it's a part of my purpose to help this group of people in this way, right? And then to help people progress, right? So he began to show me these 3 different areas. But my purpose, simply put, is to motivate and inspire. Right. I can do that if I'm a nurse. I can do that in the grocery store. I can do that while I'm riding down 75 if I wanted to. You know what I mean? Like I can do my purpose anywhere and everywhere. And that is how we're supposed to operate. Whether I am on the phone with someone and I'm motivating and inspiring them through, helping them understand where they're going to go next or giving them clarity, giving them a word, or whether I was in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, whether I'm in Atlanta and I am praying for a man and God is using me to heal his arm. 2 completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but I am still moving in purpose. So I would say that you have to go in before you go out, right? Look within. Think about what are the things that, that come natural to you, the things that God has just really placed on your heart, the burdens that you have. Yep. Ask God, what is it that I have that you need to use, that you desire to use in the earth?
It's so interesting because number one, Darius Daniels talks a lot about that. I can't remember which book of his I read, truthfully, but he did speak to like, what are the burdens or the things that you just feel like kind of annoy you a little bit or that you want to fix? You're like, why is this thing like this? Or why does this feel broken? Yeah. And you talked about broken systems and things of that nature. But another thing that I heard when you were just speaking is that we have the potential to limit ourselves. Yes. When we feel the need to just like be so bent up out of shape on a title, on one thing, on seeing one thing come to pass. I joked earlier that you have lived so many lives, but truthfully, like God has been using you in so many different capacities and facets. And that's just so beautiful to see because we're not meant, or I don't believe that we are meant to just do one thing.
Absolutely not. Purpose is a foundation, right? I consider it like if I think about a pyramid, purpose is a foundation, but our assignments kind of going up, shift and change over time. There was a time where I was working with teenagers and that was my assignment during the time I knew exactly what I was called to do with them. I was in youth ministry. right now, I don't want to be with no teenagers. Y'all, no, that shifted. Hallelujah. Now, adults got their own set of things, you know what I mean? But like, he will shift and change things over time. He gives you different assignments. He might give you a different target audience. He might be moving you into a different area, but your purpose is the same.
Yeah.
Right? You're living out that purpose. And another thing that is even coming up right now, purpose is not a destination. When you get there, it ain't to stop on the train tracks and you gonna get off. Baby, no. The train's going to keep moving. Okay. It is a whole journey. The purpose stays the same, but the assignments shift and change over time. New people going to get on the train. God's going to call you to serve them. New places you're going to stop in new places. And so it's an evolving process that begins to happen, especially as you grow and evolve as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm so glad you said that because I think that that's so freeing. We work towards the same thing so hard.
Yeah.
Or we work towards the one thing so hard sometimes. And it's like, where are you leaving room for God? I'll be asking myself that every day or reminding myself that every day. Leave room. Leave room.
For him to move, for him to shift, for things to happen that are just uncommon.
Y'all, this conversation it's just too good. We're going to have to part to it, which means if you are listening in, if you are tuning in, please meet us here next week, same time, same place for part 2 with Dr. LaTanya Moore. I can't wait. This conversation is so amazing. I'll see y'all soon.